Yeah, so I'm sitting there playing third base, and the boys are just undressing Gene Lamont at third base, just screaming at him, get in the ball, just like.
Do you know how it started?
No idea. I was trying to play a baseball game.
You're trying. So we go and we're at Royals. We're at the K and we're watching the game. And Gene Lamont was just standing there, and Will Ferrell just took it upon himself to just scream at Gene Lamont throughout the entire game, like, oh. Gene Lamont, come on, Lamont! And then we got interviewed on television about Big Slick, and Will joined in the interview, and all he did on live television was talk about Gene Lamont.
We appreciate you obviously coming on. We talk about how in sports, when you collab sports, celebrities, each city has like a representative that really represents that city, that state, that team, whatever it is. So Kansas City, you guys, you, Rob, Eric, Jason, you guys have been doing Big Slick for a lot of years now. It started out as, I know, a poker tournament, as you told me. But when you guys have been as successful as you have, as busy as you are, to have that on the schedule each and every year, to know that our friends and family are doing this event, this is 3-4 days out of all of our years. Not only that, but now you have the Kansas City Chiefs that it seems like they're in the Super Bowl each and every year. How special are those times to know that the Big Slick is there, and on the side of that, you guys know that at some point in time, we're going to find time to be together again, because these Super Bowl runs and this crazy run that we're on as a sports town.
Yeah, it's been surreal. I mean, it's been amazing. You guys kicked it off.
Yeah, we did.
Thank you for saying that, because I've been saying that. I'm like, I need someone else to say that.
Yeah, thank you. It doesn't mean as much if we say it.
No. It was, and I'll talk about that year also if you guys want, what that means. To be able to have in my lifetime, and really like for my kids who are like born and raised in New York City and diehard Kansas City fans.
I got a Jack now too.
Congratulations, by the way.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Yes.
To know for them, like, and him growing up, like, oh my God, the teams that I root for won championships. I think that's kind of formative in a major way that you can't ever really put it into words. Like when you're a kid and you like sports, it really is your world. So like when you guys won, my son was like out of his mind. And he's a diehard Chiefs fan, always has been since he was like 6. And when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, it was like out of body. And so for a kid to experience their favorite team winning something is so huge in their lives. And I thought, is my kid ever going to get to experience this? And it's happened. It happened with you guys, and it happened with the Chiefs, and it happened in this town, and especially in a town like Kansas City, which, growing up here, I always said, like, the best thing that can happen to any town is if a team wins a championship, because like everyone forgets about any differences, anything. It's just everyone's in a great mood, and it's incredible.
Yeah,
game day every day.
Yeah,
parades every year.
And to be able to come back now and do this event every year, to have you guys involved, to have Mahomes and Kelsey involved, and Veach, the Chiefs do stuff, the Royals do stuff, to see these hosts and all these guys, and a lot of our guests, they come every year. It does feel like this family event. I mean, our families run it, so it's unique. I don't think this exists anywhere else.
No, it's so cool because Moose and I talk about, that first year in 2014 when we went to the World Series and lost. We're, 23, 24, 25, whatever it is. We're young kids at that point in time. And it really hasn't set in what we're accomplishing. We just made the playoffs. We lost the World Series. Next year we go, we win. And all of a sudden it becomes a whirlwind. Like you, Rob, you guys are all coming in the clubhouse every other day. We win the World Series. We fly back from New York. it's like, all right, we have a parade with 900,000 people. And then after the parade, Moose, you're getting on a private plane, you're going to California to do the Jimmy Kimmel show. I'm getting on a plane, going to New York to do the Jimmy Fallon show. We're at the Jimmy Fallon show. Case and I, who you just saw, we're sitting there in our green room. All of a sudden, Paul Rudd walks in. Hey, Hoz, what's going on? And I'm like,
I can't get enough. I'm following you. I'm like a stalker.
No, I loved it. I'm like, yeah, I know him. Look at that jawline. I know this guy.
I know this guy.
So it's unbelievable how now Kansas City is a city, a place where people are like, oh, we hope they win. They're America's team.
Yeah.
Now it's a complete opposite of that. Now it's like they cannot win anymore.
It's weird.
Yeah, speaking of that run at 15, I remember coming off the field and me and this guy took a couple pictures together. It's like me, him, my dad, my wife. I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like, Paul's down here with us.
I couldn't believe it. I was out of my mind too. I still have all those pictures on my phone. I have the pictures from us on Fallon. I have the pictures, you grabbed me and lifted me up on the field. I'm like, because at the end of the day, it's like, I'm still just the kid that's the fan. I can't believe that I get to, like, I know you guys. It blows my mind. I can't believe that I get that kind of access, which is unreal, to be able to go onto the field or the
I saw
room.
you in New York after the game, after they won, in the tunnel waiting for them to celebrate and pop champagne. So I was with the Royals prior to that, and I went on to the Mets, so they won without me.
Yes.
And so,
I know.
yeah,
sorry. I know. I'm so sorry.
Anyway, I got to experience that, but I was standing there next to you in the hallway waiting to go in after they, did their champagne, and I was in awe of, like, what's going on? These guys won. I'm standing next to Paul Rudd, and I could, like, see it in your eyes the same too. You're just like a little kid in a candy shop waiting to get in there, and Bobby Cannavale's behind me. I'm kind of in the same boat you guys are. I'm like, what is happening right now? These guys did it. It was so awesome, man.
What I often hear, you hear that just this narrative in sport on the impact that the team has on the fans. As players in the big leagues, what impact do the fans and the city have on you as players?
Oh, tremendous. Like, we fed off of that energy. We fed off the energy every single day, like going out on the field. But like we were talking about our kids, going back to that, we just had the 10-year reunion not too long ago, and I took only my son out, and we got back home, and he's like, Daddy, I didn't know how much you meant to those people out there. I'm like, wow, dude, like, that's pretty cool because everybody's so grateful for what we did. He's like, you're a pretty special guy out in Kansas City. I'm like, thanks, buddy. Like, it means a lot. Yeah, so, like, to get that love that even my son saw was pretty cool.
It's awesome, man.
I can't wait for that because next year is the 2015 reunion, and my Jack will be a little over 2 years old. So I'm hoping he just has a flash or two and remembers something, but we'll see. But to give Paul a little background of what we got going on now, obviously, we're a very successful actor, still are. Now you're on the production side of it. So Moose and I and Anthony, we are the players that are no longer playing. Now we are trying to find a way to help, to give back, to educate, inform everybody in the sports. Youth sports is crazy now, baseball especially. So how different is it when you're in the fight as an actor, you're doing your role, doing your thing, and then now when you take a step back and you're on the outside and you're kind of in control of some different things that are going on within the game, so to speak, how different is that role, and how has that adjustment been for you in doing that role?
I think some of this stuff happens just over time where it's just like, in a way you can't even plan for that kind of thing. I always had goals, but like we're here this weekend because we're doing, it's like the 15-year anniversary of 15 years of Big Slick, of this event. When Rob and Jason and I did it the first year, we didn't know it was going to be more than 1 year. I mean, it just kind of evolved, and over time these things kind of snowball and take on a life of their own. And then as far as like my career with acting, was like I got a job. I booked a job. I couldn't believe it. I auditioned and I was able to get a call back and more. And then another one happened. And then over time, it started to just evolve without even, in a way I was aware, but like all of a sudden I was writing stuff, and it was like, that was never my goal really, but that just kind of came out of that. And then production came out of that. And then over time, it's like, oh my God, so many years have now passed. And if I'm on a set, oftentimes it's like I have more experience than the director or other people that are working on the set, on the crew, just because I've just been doing it longer. And so that starts to kind of morph into other things. You guys are like baseball's not that far in your rear view mirror by any means. My God, just no. But in like 10 years, you think like, okay, you want to give back. What will your career? What is it that you're going to be doing? What is that going to look like? And it'll be a version of what you imagine, but it's going to be so much more. And you can't really predict what it'll be. You can work toward it, but things happen along the way that make you turn left, and then something else comes along. And so I think when I look back now and go, wow, I've been doing this a long time and I'm involved in some things I never would have imagined I'd be involved in. It's just by nature of sticking around and doing it.
You're doing blockbusters too, like Ghostbusters, Ant-Man. You essentially have your own character out there. And some of my favorites that are like Wanderlust that I feel like are underrated. You've done so many funny things, but you didn't necessarily, from what I've read and heard, you didn't start as a comedian. That's not really what you talk about goals. Like that wasn't the goal, right?
No,
but
never,
not only are you one of the sexiest men alive, you're also one of the funniest.
That was definitely never a goal. I don't think it's a goal I've ever achieved. But no, I never. I didn't do stand up, and I never studied sketch comedy or any of that stuff. I just I always loved comedians, and I liked comedy. I got that job on Anchorman, which then led to a bunch of movies with Judd Apatow and Will Ferrell and that crowd. And then all of a sudden it was like those movies struck a chord at a certain moment in time. And then, well, there you go. I never would have predicted that, but that's how it happens. I mean, as far as the Marvel stuff, like I never would have ever imagined that was going to be anything that would have happened. And that happened because the guy who was supposed to direct it asked me to play the part. And then he actually wound up not directing the movie, but I wound up still being in it. And then, these things just kind of happen. Same thing with like Ghostbusters. It's weird. It's crazy to just be like, whoa, how did this happen? And the whole thing about me being on the field with you, like, I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm around these guys. I was like, I can't believe I'm there. It was like, there's Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, or, because like that thing never goes away. Thankfully, I never want it to go away. Because it's just such a surreal and fun job. And I'm lucky enough to have been able to kind of, at least in some way, keep it going for a while until I really get figured out.
Same. I mean, we got figured out not too long ago. So our gig was up.
What I love about what you're saying, it reminds me of like minor league baseball. So what a lot of minor league baseball players will do is a high A player, a guy in double A, he'll look to the big leagues and he wants to be at the next level, or they just want to be at the next level, and they're so focused on the future that they're struggling in the present. And a common phrase that you hear a lot of minor league players, or the advice you give them, is dominate the level you're at. Just put your head down and dominate the level you're at, and opportunities will start to find you. And I love what you said too, because you see a lot of players, the more experience you have, the longer you play, all of a sudden you are learning the intricacies of the sport. You learn a little bit more about analytics or leadership or general managers and how rosters are constructed. And then all of a sudden, I'm just connecting dots now based on what you said. You're like, oh, I could do that, or your curiosity starts to blossom, and then you find yourself and then all of a sudden your hard work and focusing in the present all of a sudden positions you for opportunities that you probably couldn't have even predicted years prior.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear. I mean, it must be like you guys going through minor leagues, going through all of those. All right, when am I going to get called up? When is that going to happen? And you are doing stuff where it's like that is the very nature of your job. It's like, I have to get to that point. And it is similar, like when you're acting like, I just need one role. That's going to get me to the next thing. But all those enlightened conversations from the people who know these kinds of things always say, it's about living in the moment. If you really want to achieve what you can't look ahead. You have to, like you just said, focus on where you're at now, and the rest kind of does take care of itself.
It's just like, look at you guys right now. You own a a media company. You're probably 10 years ago that version of you wouldn't even never even thought you would be doing this.
10 years ago, you wouldn't have known what a podcast was.
Hated everything about a camera, microphone,
all of it. And like,
They had to pay me to get on the bird today. I was like, I'm not sure I'm coming.
Booked about 7 different flights, but yeah, it's so funny because what Justin specializes in is process and development. And when you come up as a young player, you're willing to do whatever you got to do to succeed. Whatever a coach tells you, you're willing to put in the work. You're willing to do all that. Then you get about 4 or 5 years in the league. You have kind of an understanding of what's going on, and then you go through certain things business-wise with contracts, and you understand kind of how that stuff starts to go. So by the time you're 7, 8 years in the league, you kind of have a grasp on how the process is going and how everything's happening. So that's where, as a young player, don't know, head down, boom. Now you have experience, and it's like, man, like, I feel like I can kind of run some of these teams right now. If I were to be put in a manager position, I'm not saying I'd be successful, but I would have a pretty good idea on how everything would go about. So that's something that with baseball, with a lot of information, a lot of data, and all the analytical stuff, how different is that now from an acting standpoint to when you first started getting into big time roles in movies to now on the production side, really understanding, hey, this is what we got to do. This is what I need in you as a young actor. Has a lot of that changed as far as like what we're looking for in a young actor to be successful? Or is that stuff that you really try and keep to the fundamentals that got you to where you are right now?
Great question. I mean, I don't know. I wanted to
ask that, but about like 10 sentences shorter. Tight debate.
Ultimately, what you realize that it's simple. It's always the same thing. Which certainly, like what I'm doing is like telling. It's like, all right, I guess you just kind of want to tell a story. If you're an actor in a movie, it's like your job is really, it's like, all right, I got to play that part, but really to service the story as a whole thing. And the more you do it, it's like, okay, now I feel like I understand editing a little bit more. I understand, I can actually keep a take going and know I'm just going to reset on my own. You don't need to cut or anything. And then an editor will be able to pick up where I'm stopping and starting. You start to understand some of the kind of basic fundamentals of actual filmmaking. I still don't quite understand lenses, and people say, "Oh, this is there a 40 on that?" Like, I don't know what any of that means. I don't really get lighting. I don't like that kind of stuff, and I know there are people that are in charge of that kind of thing. But I understand script writing. I understand direction now. I understand producers and some of the stuff the responsibilities that they have, and I guess I kind of understand what goes into it more. But it's really all that is just, parts of the essential thing, which is, all right, we got to work together to kind of tell a story. When you're starting off in sports, and it's like, all right, my job is I have to play this position. I got to play at first base. I got to be, I got to be at third base. I got to be like, I have to field. I have to hit. I have to do all this. But really, it's like I have to be a part of this team so that we can all work together and try and win games. When it's like you understand so many of the nuances that go into that. That's like, now I really could manage because I get, like, I know what all of the other, like, what the other managers and coaches underneath me are. I understand what scouts do. I understand what equipment managers do. I like all these kinds of things that you probably never really think about when you're starting off. But it's like all of those people are all working toward the same goal. It's the same thing with like an actor or a director or a writer or anything.
What are some of your greater experiences then on set that compared to that, like that you've had that great team, whether it's from the production side or the cast that you were with? Are there certain ones that have stood out to you more that you've been on set with?
I think the most fun and the times when it felt really has been, I don't know, it was really clicking are probably some of the comedies with a lot of the same people that I've worked with, like Will and Ferrell or Seth Rogen or something, only because we all, I think, found a lot of the same things funny. And because of the way that Adam McKay, who's directing a lot of those movies, and Judd Apatow as well, how they work requires a lot of improvisation. So on those movies, more than anything else, there was really like this, all right, we're going to film it. We have a script. we're going to film a scene as it's kind of written, but then we're just going to start making things up and kind of use the script or this scene as a blueprint. And then it's like working on a scene and it's like Will Ferrell or Ferrell, like they're so funny and you just don't know what's going to happen that, you know, it's actually so similar to sports where it's like you guys are working as a team right? And it's reactions like, this is not how this is drawn up, but I know what you're going to do. I know what you're going to do. I know what, and it's like we're in the zone and this is fun and you feel completely locked in and you're not thinking about anything else except what's happening right now. That's the way it feels on those. And so, as a result, they were the most fun, probably the most creatively fulfilling. Yeah. And it was also kind of exciting to be a part of something that like, oh wow, people are seeing these movies and these people are talking about like lines from the films and they're making their way into kind of pop culture. And when you're an actor, if something's really working in your kind of career, and it can still be kind of a lonely thing because it's just you. I always was envious of, you know, guys that played on teams or bands or something. There's like, oh, if things are really working for you, you all experience it together. And it's so much more fun when you can share it with somebody that's kind of going through it at the same time. And I felt like with some of those comedies, a group of us were kind of going through some sort of rise or whatever, success at the same time. And so it made it more fun.
That actually doesn't not compare to sports teams that much because sometimes they stay together and it gels and it works for a long time. Sometimes it gets dismantled very quickly. Yeah. And you might spend a great summer together and win, but then next year it might be different. And it sounds like it's very similar to a movie.
Yeah. You go to somewhere else and they're not operating the same way as it was before where you had success.
That's not how we do things here.
No, it's hard because now you're battling something completely different. But you talk about some lines and some movies that, you know, really stick with people. And I know it wasn't you, but it was in your movie. And I was number 35. So I just remember all the time being up there hitting. And all of a sudden I hear Moose in the dugout say, come on, 35, give it everything you got. And I'm like, all right, come on, baby. I'm going to give it everything I got right here. But so we talk about, that's so funny you said that too, because Justin's daughter, Eliana, she's a young actress and she's been doing great. And she gets a big time role with some big time actors. And the first day she comes home, she says, Dad, this is different because we have our script and it threw me off. And I hope this is okay sharing because I remember you telling me this. Story? Yes, go ahead. Please. Take it from here.
So here's the thing. So she plays Dwayne Johnson's daughter in Hobbs and Shaw. And there's a scene with her, Dwayne Johnson, and Ryan Reynolds. And it's a scene where Dwayne and her are eating and it's her first big role. She memorized the script. She memorized Dwayne's roles, his lines, and Ryan Reynolds' lines. Right when it starts, and she's 9 at the time, starts, Ryan approaches, scene goes, and then Ryan hits them with a line that's not on the script. Throws my daughter off, and she's like, what? And then they had to do multiple takes because Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson were improvising, but my daughter doesn't have the chops to do that. She didn't know what was happening. She's like, they don't know their lines, and like, no, it's like you're the one, like, and so they.
By the way, she might have been right.
And so that was her, and so Ryan was so great, and Dwayne was so great with her to teach her and help her, and they ended up doing a great scene. But she had learned a very valuable lesson. She goes, okay, I need to learn how to adjust on the fly, and so that's just so fascinating.
But again, that's like those actors. It isn't always the case. You know, I would say most of the time she would show up and they would be doing the lines as written. And if you're doing a play, always as written. There's not improvise. You know, you're not doing any kind of improvisation.
But you do Broadway.
Yeah, but and then it's the opposite. It's like, no, you don't actually change a word of it. It's plays are very different.
So what I'm actually interested as well, one thing I love about great teams is they hold each other accountable. A lot of times what great teams what happens is the leader, the manager doesn't have to say a word. Doesn't have to say a word sometimes because players hold each other accountable. I'm just naive to this. Does that happen on sets? Are there ever moments where an actor will hold another actor and say, hey, we don't do that. Hey, we need to step it up, or hey, we need to get better, or we need to clean it up. Does that ever happen on sets?
I don't know. You know, I think that sometimes I always feel like the mood of a set is kind of determined by the director, or if there's, like the lead actor, who sometimes will work with the director. I mean, I think of like Will and McKay or whatever, they'll usually lead by example. So if you're there and like, everybody's really cool, I don't want to be a dick. I'm gonna like kind of like just not, you don't want your ego to get in the way. And it feels like usually if it's a good group, everyone's kind of like, don't take yourself too seriously. Otherwise you're gonna get ostracized by everybody else here. And so thankfully, I think that does exist probably in some version. It certainly has on things that I've worked on, but I feel like it's probably a little different with a team. Like, I don't know. I'm so envious of like what you guys get to experience.
I definitely don't know this, but as a team, when you're performing in sports, you perform on the field, you go back into the locker room and everyone's still together. As an actor, you perform and you kind of go back to your trailer, everyone's separate, right? So there's not really, is there a locker room kind of companionship there? Is that going on?
It really varies from set to set. What's changed a lot of that are phones. So like if you're shooting a scene or something like, and then you don't go back to your trailer, it's like you have to stay on the soundstage or wherever. And sometimes they would set up chairs. And so you would always sit around and talk, but now everybody's, a lot of times they're just on their phones. Some directors don't want cell phones on set because of that reason. Some sets, people are really good about, no, let's all talk and hang out. Other ones, people kind of go off on their own, and it just really varies.
It's amazing you say that. That's same with sports.
It
You've
really
seen,
is.
Have you guys seen that change?
So our last couple of years, you have certain spots throughout a baseball season where, say, you have a day game and then a night game the next day. So you have an opportunity to enjoy an evening and sleep in at night, go to the field the next day, do your thing at night, whatever. The last 3-4 years of our career, Moose and I would kind of vent to each other how different this was, because you have that day game and it's like, hey guys, let's go to dinner, boys. Like, we're on the road. Everyone's, their families are at home. Let's go get some dinner somewhere, get back to the hotel, get a nice, good night's sleep, meal, whatever. And now the kids they're like, no, I brought my PlayStation. I want to put my headset on and play some Call of Duty. And I'm like,
cancelers.
Dude, we're in fucking New York City right now. Let's go to dinner. Like, yeah, like what?
I've never heard that.
It's so different now. It really is so different.
It was funny because I set up a night a couple years ago. Like we're out in New York. I was gonna go, but I set up a night for the boys at the club, and I was like, "You guys going?" They're like, "No, we're gonna go back and play video games." I'm like, "Are you serious, dude? Like, we're in New York and we have a night game the next day. You guys don't want to go out?" Like, no, like we're gonna go back. I'm like, all right, cancel. I was like, Steph, do you want to go? Like, me and you, bottle service out here. Like,
Paul, I got you being a big club guy.
I live in the club.
I got you being a big club guy.
It's kind of
speaking of some.
That's why I got into this business.
I can see. I knew it. I see that look in your eyes.
there we go.
What? So this is something that we love to bring up. We brought it up to Rob. So not only, 2014, that was the first year, Kansas City Royals, we went in the playoffs. And then from that point on, obviously the Chiefs have been unbelievable. So it started title town for Kansas City. So there's got to be some fun story in there, as one Super Bowl, you were either in Vegas last year or you had some kind of party going on. But I know there's got to be one epic story in there about one of the games you were somewhere and something crazy happened. Do you have any of those stories?
Oh, I have several. When you got the craziest thing, the coolest thing, when we were shooting Ant-Man, was the very first one, and there was a fluke in the schedule. It was just kind of like so perfect. It was kind of a dream job for an actor, because it's like, okay, in this sequence, I have to shrink down and you don't see me. So I'm in the scenes, but I don't really have to be there to film them. But there was a moment in the schedule. I'm shooting every day, but there was a moment where it was like the end of the movie, and the end of the movie is like, I'm that big. So they have to shoot all of this stuff, but I'm actually not there. So as a total fluke, that my 2 weeks off started the playoffs. Started against I shot the day after you guys beat the A's.
One of the greatest games of all time.
I still have on my phone my reaction. I recorded myself freaking out.
It's about the team.
I'm in Atlanta where we're shooting this thing, and I was home. I'm watching the game.
Are you by yourself?
By myself. By myself watching. Going, I can't believe this. I can't believe. I'm texting with some friends. I'm like, the game. You guys win the game. I can't even believe. I'm freaking out so much that I film myself. I don't understand. Just so that I could send it to my friend going, this is how I feel right now. I did. I still have it on my phone. But then it was like, oh my God, I'm actually not filming for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to get to go to games, which, hadn't been the case. So to be able to go through all of that and be at every game. I mean, be back here, it was just absolutely unreal. And then there's other specific stories. I remember going to in 2015, going to out to Citi Field, and my son and I were walking. And we were in our Royals gear, and it was. I remember we were walking. His school was having a Halloween party, so because it was I think it was the day before Halloween, and everybody was dressed up. We're in our Royals gear because we're going to the game. And I just remember that there was a movie, Batman versus Superman, was out at the time. We're walking down the street in New York, and this woman who was dressed as Batman, is walking past us. And my son, who's a little kid, she looks at us and she just goes, "Go Mets." And my son looks at her and says, "Go Superman." And that's my boy. And I go, that's better than some comedy writers. I go, that was so quick. That was so quick. So quick. That's so good.
And then we went and we just went to the game. Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, that's crazy. You go back to the '85 World Series now. You went to the games there?
Yeah.
Mandy told us an epic story. Okay, so Mandy, Paul's sister. Mandy tells us a story in 1985. She was in 4th or 5th grade, whatever it was, and she literally knew the guy's first and last name. And I don't know if this is it. She's like, "Yeah, we're in class. All of a sudden, Bob Barker, I'm going to sit down," pulls my chair from me, and I fall, whatever. The class starts laughing at me. The kid that pulled my chair, his mother, gets a call from the principal, finds out what he did to Mandy, and was supposed to go to a game that night in '85 at the World Series. You're acting like you don't know this. It's your sister. No. So she goes, "Yeah, the day that happened, the guy doesn't go to the game as a kid, but to this day, we still know each other, keep in contact, and joke about him not being able to go to the game because he pulled the chip."
Wow. That is, by the way, that's...
You need to talk to your sister a lot more.
Parent. You're not going to the game. Not only did I go to '85, so I was born in New Jersey. And when I moved to Kansas City, I was really young. And my dad, the reason we lived in Kansas City is my dad used to work for TWA Airlines, and TWA's hub was in Kansas City. So when we moved here, the Royals had just gotten into the World Series against the Phillies in 1980. And I went. I had never been, and then I went again in '85. I was at Game 6, the bad call. I've been with the games in 2014 and 2015. I've been every time the Royals were in the World Series. I went, which is
wild because I didn't know in '80. I've only known till '85. I did not know in '80 they went.
So in '80 they went in '80, and it was the only time, and they lost to the Phillies. And
George was George on that team or not? Mm-hmm. He was.
Yep.
Blew it, George. Yep. George is off me after this episode. He does not like me after this episode.
We'll release it after we film it.
Yeah, he was on the team. He was 75. I think it was his rookie year.
You were talking about how analytics, or not analytics, instant replay and stuff.
We were talking about that Game 6. You were there. All right, so you got to experience something that I don't think people can experience now. That call at first base, it was clearly out, right? I'm sure everyone at the stadium knew.
Yeah.
But who cares? Especially at home, right?
But we
Everyone's
weren't
loving
sure.
it.
We didn't know whether or
Really?
not, we couldn't tell. They didn't play it back. I mean, like, I don't know. It was,
If you're
you know,
watching it on TV, you clearly see. So I assumed it was like that in the stadium, but I guess so. He's safe. You're at home, right? Down. For those who don't know, Royals are down 3-2 in the series. They're down by 1, bottom of the 9th, at home, about to lose and go home. World Series over. Bad call at first base. Atra, I forget, Jose Atra, I think his name was. He gets called safe. Orta, that's it.
George Orta, yeah.
He gets called safe. Next batter, pop up to first base. Do you remember the chain of events?
Yeah.
Pop up in foul territory. Jack Clark misses it, right? Misjudges. Their miscommunication with the catcher. So get another chance. Single to left. Next batter, failed bunt. So you got the Cardinals messing up. Now the Royals are messing up. Next, Hal McRae comes to pinch hit. Second pitch, cross up. Ball gets by. So now it's second and third. However, then they intentionally walk him. So it's just like this back and forth of the teams messing up. But two things happen there. They end up getting a walk-off single. By the way, go to Game 7, win like 11-0. World Series over. But the call at first base wouldn't happen nowadays, right?
Yeah.
With replay. The cross-up probably wouldn't happen nowadays with the play, the pitch calling in the
Pitch calm, yeah.
in the ear. But like, if you ever go watch that half inning back, it's such an exciting, fun thing to watch, and it just that's taken out of the game now. And
Yeah.
like that human element and just the mistakes. Like, technology is, I don't know. I don't like it.
And
Man.
even
It's screwing up
14,
the game.
so 14 was the first year of replay. So the 5th inning, I hit a ball up the middle. We got guy on first and second. I hit a ball up the middle. Joe Panic, second baseman of the Giants.
Hate it.
Full extension. You ruined my life, Joe.
Yeah.
Flips it to second, throws it first. They call me safe on the field, but they challenge it, overturns. Billy Butler hits a double down the line, which I would have scored on, and it would have been 3-3. So we don't know how that game's going to end, but we can talk about that.
Joe Panic from upstate New York.
Yeah, he was from upstate New York.
He's from Poughkeepsie, I think.
He is. He was from where my dad's from, not upstate, but my dad's from close to West Point, from Cold Spring, New York.
Sure, yeah.
So Joe Panic, we
Yeah,
were
he
talking
was
about
all out
that.
there, yeah.
Great guy. I hate him. Joe Panic.
Yeah, I do. I hated everyone on that Giants team. Hated them all.
Let me ask you this too. So I hate to keep throwing you under the bus, buddy, but so Sue's wife produces movies, and now when you guys go to the movies and watch a movie, how different the process is, and it's the same for me and Moose and Telly. When we watch a baseball game, it's not like you can't just sit down and watch the game.
Right.
You're evaluating.
Yep.
It's the same way for you. Got to be for movies and shows and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's true. You look at it differently. It's interesting to hear how you guys feel about this, because I think back to like when I was little, I was like, I'm a sports fanatic. I love watching sports. And then I started to kind of fall out of sports a little bit. I love movies and television and comics and all that. And it's like, all right, I have this need for drama. I love it. And the more I started working in this, I started going back to sports. And I realized, it's like, I don't know how to do it. All the drama is there, and more so than in movies and things like that, because now I kind of know how it all works. And I remember Michael Douglas did this interview, and they asked him, like, what do you watch, like, for entertainment, like what shows? He goes, I watch sports. He goes, when you've been doing this as long as I've been doing, you kind of know how everything's going to end. But with sports, you never know how it's going to end. I thought that really makes sense. You just don't know. And so, and if you know the players involved, and you know their stories, or you know where they played in college, who they're playing, like, there's so much drama in it. And it's so kind of pure and great. And it's also the only thing that I think can make people who would hate each other hug each other. If you root for the same team, your political opinions, all this stuff, it's just, it transcends that. So it has real value. But my need for drama and how I kind of like, how that's satisfied me is now really sports, even more than movies and shows, because, like, oh yeah, I kind of know how it works. I can still appreciate it. And if I still see movies or shows and I love them, I mean, it's like awesome. But some of the mystery is gone.
Yeah. So Case, my wife, sent us a meme the other day about movies there is only 7 plots that movies can actually have. Or
Like so different. There are obviously more. So obviously the different. What do you call it? Not stages of a movie. What are they called?
Beats.
There's different arcs and different movie, and then there are different. Yeah, there are different.
Was that boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy?
Yes. There's all of those different. And when you're producing a movie, are you trying to? Is there a framework that you're trying to fit within? And if you don't follow the framework, it just doesn't, it's not going to be a successful movie. Like what it goes into producing and designing, like,
I don't know. I mean, it's, it's still kind of strange how, like, what works, what doesn't work. And every once in a while, some movie will come along and it's like, what? Like even like that everything everywhere all at once. You see the movie and go, what? How do you even think of that? And yet
and what people are attracted to, it's the same thing with any of the stuff we create nowadays, whether it's from a feature film to social media. You just don't know what's going to hit. What are the people going to like? So it's just like,
well, audiences are sophisticated, and I think that like anybody, it's like you just kind of want to be moved in some way. I think. And everything's different. I mean, sometimes it's like I just want to zone out and have a funny comedy, or I want to like be something thought provoking and intense, or, it is true. There are those kind of like, all right, we do a 3-act structure, and we have to do these kind of arcs. A character needs to learn, so it has some sort of objective of what's going on in this story, and in the same way, if like with music, it's like there's only so many notes and so many chord progressions. I mean, like you can. There's really, it's not a ton of them, but yet every song kind of incorporates them. Right. So like, why is it some work, some don't? It's mysterious still, but.
That's how we felt about our swings most of the time too. It's just mysterious.
Well, also, by the way, the swings, and let me ask you, because isn't the hardest thing to do in all of like professional sports is hit a baseball? It's the hardest thing.
I would agree.
I'd agree, yes.
Yeah. It is, and it's not getting any easier whatsoever. And it's so funny because there's so many times where Moose and I would be out on the field at Kauffman Stadium at 12:30 in the afternoon doing early hitting, and I'm watching this guy hit, and he just crushes the ball, and he's like, nope. All of a sudden the ball hits the second deck in the fountain. I'm like, nope. What went wrong there? But like he just searches for perfection on every single swing, and that's what it got to. That is exactly the point that it got to. It was like, I don't want to not take a swing and not feel perfect on every single swing that I take. And mentally, it kind of drives you crazy when you don't feel that perfection every swing.
Well, you've tried it against Jeremy Guthrie, right?
Yeah, I remember taking that batting practice when you guys were, by the way, you were so nice to let us even go out there and like, you have a game to play and you're just,
Do what you gotta do.
no, hardly.
We'll start the game at 8 o'clock. We gotta start the game at 8.
But I remember, one of the guys saying, like, one of the coaches saying, I think everyone that's in the stands that yells at a player, like, you're a bum, how could you miss out? If every one of them could just get into a batter's box and try and hit this one time, they would change their tune. It is like trying to hit a bullet. It is, I mean, I don't know, it's incredible.
That's what we tell the pitchers. It's like, if you just took one at bat against yourself, you know that's impossible to hit. So don't get tricky. Just throw the ball over the plate. It's
so hard.
Is it hard? What is it like when it's like ninth inning, 2 outs? When you find yourself in that situation when it's like, okay, I could win this for us, and the stakes are so high. Do you like being in that position? Is it awful? Are you able to kind of zone it out because you're professional athletes and you're just wired that way? Like, what is that like?
So when you were a kid, when you were in the backyard playing wiffle ball, like, what did you used to say?
Yeah, that's it.
You dream of it. So when you get into that position, actually, it's something you've ever dreamed of, and you're just like, wow, I'm actually here. Like, this is amazing.
Does something come over your brain? Like, are you able to kind of think differently? Do you see slower?
So George would tell us, he'd say, the calmer you can get, the better you're going to be. If you can slow your heart rate down, the better you're going to be. So you try and get in the box and calm down. And I always had a problem with that. So I'd try and get in the box and just slow down as much as I can and see the ball as long as I can. But I was always trying to hit a fucking homer. Everybody wants to see a walk-off.
To me, it took a lot of the mental load off of me, because every other at bat I went up there, I was like, okay, all right, let's see the pitch up. Let me make sure I'm relaxed and my elbow drops in the slot and I go boom, boom, boom. But when I got to the 8th and 9th inning and the game's on the line, I was in that mentality of like, fucking, I just got to get this done.
Yeah.
And it took all those thoughts away from me and I became a competitor again. From a mental standpoint, I was the type of player that I wish every at-bat can feel like that, because I bought into certain things at the end of my career that I thought that could make me better, that kind of took away from my natural ability. So for me, that 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, that big at bat, it took all that mental stuff away. And I was just like, competitor, compete. I'm looking you in the eyes. I'm better than you, which I got that from Moose. I went back one time, there was a lefty that came in the 8th inning and I run back to the dugout and the hitting coach has his little binder or whatever, and he's flipping the pages. Okay, there's a lefty. We got this, and this. I'm like, what do you got on the 0-1 count here? And Moose is like, you're just fucking better than this guy. Go out and hit the baseball. I'm like,
Sometimes that's, yeah.
And it was the best piece of advice I ever got, because there were so many times later on in my career where little Moosey on my left shoulder was just like, you're just fucking better than this guy. And it put me in a mood. My mindset was, let's compete, and that's all I thought about. There was no mechanics, nothing.
Go ahead, dude.
I was just saying, one of my favorite articles was about Patrick Mahomes. They attached him to some biofeedback to get his heart rate during, I think it was a Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. And they showed publicly what his heart rate was like during the game. And they found something incredibly interesting to your question. His heart rate was the highest when he was on the sideline while the defense was out there when he was watching. When he was actually under center and in the game, that's when it was quietest.
That's like free solo shit right there. That is like the mapping his brain. You know, Alex Honnold's only happy when he's hanging by his fingernails upside down on El Capitan. It's like, what are those cave divers that rescued those kids in Thailand? It's like, I'm only calm if I'm in a cave 2 miles underwater.
I didn't know about these guys,
dude. And it's like, you're wired a certain kind of way. He's wired that way. You have that a little bit because you're a professional athlete.
So the rest of us, as we're watching, and I don't know if it's like this as when you're watching a teammate hit in a big pressure situation, you're like, here we go. But when you're playing and you're actually in the box, you might be a lot quieter, and you might not be, even pitchers as well. And so I just find that very fascinating.
Yeah, there was a point in time, and it makes me feel so old, but the last couple years of my career, I was more nervous for certain guys on my team going up there in that big spot, because I knew we had all these conversations, we had all this dialogue about, man, when you get in this spot, just relax, step out the box, exhale as long as you can until you literally can't breathe anymore, and then get back in the box and see how that goes. So when I give those guys that advice and I see them going through this situation, it made me a little nervous, hoping that they came through. It was almost like,
big brother. I'm
a big brother now, and I'm like, come on, man, you got this. But it makes me feel old, man.
God, dude, it makes you feel old. Here I am telling you, I went to the 1980 World Series.
Well,
you guys were born.
We do have to go back 15, 17 years, talk a little bit about Big Slick, because what you guys are doing is amazing for the city, for the kids. I don't know if everyone knows the full story. So started as a poker tournament. We have the hosts that have grown. Maybe you could give us a little bit more background on what you guys are doing.
Yeah, there's this hospital here in Kansas City called Children's Mercy Hospital. That's if you are from Kansas City, chances are you either know someone that went there, you went there, you had a kid. They do a lot of really great work within the community, but because they're one of those hospitals that is not going to turn you away if you can't afford it, it's okay.
It's nonprofit.
It's nonprofit.
You don't need insurance.
And to operate how they operate, they have to just take donations. They have to they're autonomous. They're not part of a giant kind of insurance chain. So they're able to do certain things that they can do because of this. But as a result, it just, requires a lot of money going into it. And they do some real cutting edge cancer research. They are an incredible hospital for not just Kansas City, but a lot of the kind of surrounding states in the Midwest. And so I think probably about 16 years ago or so, Rob Riggle and I went to we were at KU together. Sudeikis and I actually went to the same high school. And so we were all kind of in various stages of trying to get an acting career, writing career, whatever going. And so Rob said, we should try and do something to raise some money for the hospital, because we still, obviously our families still live in Kansas City and we're still so kind of tied into the community here. So we thought, great, what should we do? And so it was around the time that those poker, like the celebrity poker tournaments were on TV, and everyone seen, there was like a real thing about poker.
It's moneymaker.
And so we're like, should we have like a poker tournament? And we thought we could invite some of our friends or other actors, maybe just reach out to some people that could come in and people can play cards and maybe we'll, raise some money. And so we were able to do it. None of us knew how to do any of this. And we asked our families. Jason's mom was a travel agent, so she was able to book the tickets for people that were kind of coming in. My mom had a connection with like the Royals. She said, like, everyone's going to be in town. Maybe the night before we do a poker tournament, we can go to the Royals game. So it'll give people something to do. That turned into the game before the game, and it's, it all grew, obviously, but we had no idea at this point, like, what it was going to be. So we had this poker tournament. Our goal was like, man, this would be great if we could raise 50 grand. And we didn't know whether or not, we thought it'd be a one-off, And it was successful enough that we were able to, and we threw together some kind of show because some comedians were here, I think we had some music, and we did it at one of the casinos, and we raised more. We were able to raise almost, I think, like 100,000, like double what our goal. And then we thought, this is great. Should we try and do this again next year? It just seemed like, oh, well, we got to say something at the show. We'll see you next year. And I was like, I guess we're doing it next year. and so our parents and our sisters and brothers and friends, from college, like we'd say, all right, how do we do this? And so everyone was kind of figuring it out as it went on. The following year, some people came back. We invited some other people. We had another poker tournament, and we used to play poker, which big slick is a poker term for a lot of people. Say like, what is big slick? It's ace king. We don't even play cards anymore. We're still big slick. People are like, why is it called that? It's a great question. It's fun. And so that every year we'd figure out something else and add something else and tweak it in some way. And that was 15 years ago. This is our 15th year, and in total, now we've raised over $21 million.
It's incredible. That's awesome.
And so it's been an amazing process. It's been a real exciting weekend for us as the hosts, and obviously, now Eric Stone Street and Keckner and Heidi Gardner. It's like the hosts, we've expanded there. Our families now, it's a full-time year-round job to get this thing going, and they're working on it year-round.
Every one of your family members are involved, right? On the board,
every single one of them, and meaning like after this weekend, in a week, they'll probably get together, start talking about next one. Wow. It so much work goes into it. And we also have volunteers. We have people that are not even in our family that now work with us and do, just because they're incredible people that do amazing things. Some of, friends of all of ours from high school and college, like, fraternity brothers, and everyone's like, they're helping out. I just got in a few hours ago, and I'm at the airport, and I see one of my yeah, you did too, right? So like, I see one of my fraternity brothers at the airport because he's there to pick up people to take them to the hotel and do that. It's like, not even me, but it's like, oh yeah, you're just kind of volunteering to help out and get people to where they need to go.
A big small town, right?
Yeah, that's an amazing thing about Kansas City, that and a lot of our guests that have come in, and they've come in more than once now, you see a lot of familiar faces. They're like, this place is unreal. Like, the people are so nice, and the feeling that you get here, it's like, it is different than in other places. And it's, I don't know if it's Midwestern or if it's specific to Kansas City. I would imagine that, if you were in Omaha or Des Moines or Denver or, St. Louis, or anything, like, you would have versions of this, but there's something about this place and the people. I mean, like, I was like kind of so blown away at how psyched people that live here are about Kansas City. I've never seen so many hometown t-shirts. Like you see the KC with the heart everywhere.
Everywhere.
And it's like you go, geez, man, people, and if you ask anyone that lives here, they're like, how do you like that? Oh, it's great. It's so nice because it's normally people bitch about everything. And here everyone's like, no, we like it here, and people are friendly, and but there's a real special feeling, certainly for us this weekend, because ultimately what it really kind of is about are these kids and these families that are at this hospital. And over the course of 15 years, I've gotten to know a lot of them, and I've gotten to know a lot of the families, and I've gotten to know a lot of the staff. The staff at this hospital, they're unreal. I mean, they just what they do, and I mean, this is the case obviously in many hospitals, but like how they treat these kids, and also what I've learned, like if a kid is suffering, like if a kid is going through cancer, and is going through all of these treatments, it's like it's not just that kid, it is the family, and so these parents that for years are just in the room and they just want. You're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And so then if you have a sibling, what a sibling is going through for, like, if there's a kid that is in the hospital and it's like, and then there's a healthy sibling, the guilt and trying to process all of this and knowing it's all about their sibling, like to really get to understand that angle of all of this stuff is something that I've learned over the last 15 years, and it's made me so much more aware and sympathetic and intent on being here and doing this every weekend until, God willing, it wouldn't be great if we didn't have to do it, but we do. But
I will say this to you, Paul. We are, as a whole, we are extremely honored to have a small role in a team that you have built for this big slick, and this is our first year being able to participate and help out. We couldn't thank you enough.
Oh my God, thank you. And by the way, you guys have been, and like you guys were there from the beginning. You've been you've seen this thing.
Gene Lamont, baby.
Gene Lamont, which still exists. Like legend. Poor Gene Lamont. What the? He must be like, what? Really? Still?
So real quick, we got to tell this before
story,
Gene Lamont, Moose, you got it. Third base coach, Detroit Tigers, first year, boom.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there playing third base, and the boys are just undressing Gene Lamont at third base, just screaming at him, get in the ball, just like.
Do you know how it started?
No idea. I was trying to play a baseball game.
So we go and we're at Royals, we're at the K, and we're watching the game, and we were playing the game beforehand. So we're sitting in the dugout right by third base, and Will Ferrell. It was like it was like our first year. And Will Ferrell is like, we're literally right there and Gene Lamont was just standing there, and Will Ferrell just took it upon himself to just scream at Gene Lamont throughout the entire game. Like, oh, Gene Lamont, come on, Lamont! And then we got interviewed on television about Big Slick, and Will joined in the interview. And all he did on live television was talk about Gene Lamont. and he's telling Joel, he goes, well, Gene Lamont's, he's the Darth Vader of baseball. He kept referring to him as the Darth Vader of baseball. And throughout the whole game, he kept saying, screaming at Gene Lamont and then screaming at Chen. Like, come on, Chen! And Bruce Chen was pitching. And he just kept screaming. And so I remember next year there were
so focused.
T-shirts of just saying, come on, Chen. And that was all Will Ferrell. But the Lamont thing was Will Ferrell. And then we did the 7th inning song, and we just wound up singing and then just singing it to Gene Lamont. It made no sense. And,
it's unbelievable.
And then the next year, we went back in and we're like, well, we should just, after we sing the 7th inning stretch, just end it with Gene Lamont again. No context. We kind of kept doing it, and one of the memories, and then all of a sudden Gene Lamont comes to the Royals, but he was at Detroit at the time. I remember we played the Tigers again a couple of years later, and we went out and sung the 7th inning and went Gene Lamont, and then I went back after we finished. We went back to the dugout, and game was being televised, and they're just saying, yeah, he's a nice man. I don't know why what the point of the whole, they were talking about it on the broadcast. Why this poor guy, they just showed Gene Lamont just sitting there. He's never addressed it. He's never said anything to us. By the way, it was the first one, and Will Ferrell was screaming at Gene Lamont, and then we had the poker tournament the next day. Will Ferrell showed up with a baseball hat. He had his hat, sunglasses, and he had a Detroit Tigers bobblehead that he dressed like Gene Lamont to always sit at the table with his cards. And he had a Gene Lamont bobblehead that he'd made.
He definitely won the poker tournament that year. That was hilarious.